Hello, everyone, and welcome to Hangouts with Visionary Leaders, thoughtful and engaging discussions with visionaries, thought leaders, and change makers that open us to a new narrative for our future, individually and collectively. Today, we'll be talking about innovation and the need for systemic change. My guest is Melanie St.James. She's the founder of Empowerment Works and the Global Summit. You'll get to meet her in just a couple minutes. But first, I'm your host, Lisa Ingalls. I'm the founder of Interstate Coaching, where I work with people who are waking up and changing the world. And I do that through the Awakened Visionary Leadership Program. It's a leadership program for conscious business owners who want to make a significant contribution to humanity and the planet. You can find out more about that program and everything else that I'm doing over at www.interstatecoaching.com. So I believe that we've reached a new era of human possibility, that individual as well as collective leadership is absolutely critical as we navigate our way through old and outdated paradigms that just no longer serve us in moving towards an expanded life and a freer future. Humanity itself is on the precipice of a new era of peace, of sustainability, of health and prosperity, but the question remains still, as a collective, how do we, or will we, first is the question, will we choose to commit ourselves to peace and declare an end to disharmony? Will we as a collective turn the potential for possibility into probability? And if so, how do we do this? So these are the types of questions that we're bringing to the table in this show. We're interested in exploring innovative ideas through engaging discussions that help us to birth a new humanity. This show is all about bringing together visionary leaders to give guidance and support and inspiration as we awaken our individual and collective potential. So if you are joining us live, please do let us know you're here in the comments below. We also know that people do watch these in replay. You can still leave comments in replay as well. The point is that we love engagement. That's what Hangouts are all about. And we want you to ask your questions. We want you to contribute to the conversation because your contribution to this conversation creates more perspective, and it's that dialogue that is going to create the change in our world. So we want to hear from you. Now, innovation lies at the heart of all big movements, and it's really responsible for the quantum leaps that humanity has undergone. We have science, technology, environment, art and music, and health. In all of these areas, there has been innovation, but all too often, innovation has been stifled or squelched by some type of system, by the systems, whether it's the educational system, the health system, environmental systems, legal systems, you name it. There's probably been an innovation somewhere that has been sort of unseen by us because of the systems. And in the last decade, there's really been this noticeable shift in acceptance of these solutions, of these innovative solutions, which is heartening to me. There's been a lot of conferences and symposiums where brilliant thought leaders and visionaries and pioneers have come together to convene to share their research, to convene to share their discoveries, their innovations, and it's brought a widespread awareness to the issues that we're facing, and also has given us some solutions for taking actions to solve these pressing challenges. So there really is an awakening happening at all levels right now, and as more people are becoming conscious of these challenges that we face, the systems are actually beginning to change. I mean, maybe just a little bit, but at least they're changing, right? And while we're nowhere close to completely overcoming our situation with climate change, and we haven't found that ultimate cure to cancer, we are making some progress, I believe. Well, my guest today is Melanie St.James, and Melanie is the founder of Empowerment Works, which is a global collaboration to catalyze local solutions through a whole systems approach. Empowerment Works engages a global community of partners in empowerment to co-create a sustainable future for humanity. Now, Melanie is also the founder of the Global Summit, which is a global sustainability think tank that meets every 2 years to create solutions from the ground up. And the purpose of that summit is to bring together some of the most diverse perspectives around the most critical planetary issues. And Melanie says that we can't afford to wait for another generation or for technology to save us. We have to use what we have right now to change the status quo, and to do that right now. So welcome to the show, Melanie. It's wonderful to have you here.
Thank you, Lisa. That was a really beautiful introduction. I think you nailed it. We've got our work
I'm done. Should we end the show now? Sorry, guys. No, but really, honestly.
Pearls of wisdom. Pearls of wisdom.
Yeah, pearls of wisdom. It's so great to have you here. And I should mention to everybody who's viewing, I met Melanie through another mutual friend of ours. And I was just so, I mean, I want to say the word enamored, because I feel like I was like, wow, you're doing so many cool things. It's like how I felt when I met you. I'm like, oh my gosh, you've done so much. And I sort of want to start there with your story of how you got to where you are right now with Empowerment Works and the Global Summit. What was the catalyst for that, for you, to start this journey?
Well, I was really, really lucky to get to study abroad and spend a few months in China when I was 20. So I usually point to that as my big awakening to what was going on in the world. And I had a really amazing father who was an extraordinary inventor. He had about 100 patents. And he was just founder of so many things, you could hardly keep up with it. And I watched him work really, really hard on one particular invention that was great for the environment, great for the economy. It cut fuel consumption and improved automotive performance, and it cleaned out 90% of particulate matter pollution out of diesel combustion engines. It was a turbocharger. And I watched him work so hard in building this company, and he ultimately went into a joint venture with a major automotive company that was owned by Honeywell. So it was Honeywell Allied Signal. And they discovered that over in this joint venture that there had been a plan to suffocate this invention rather than actually distribute it, which would have really made my dad's 10 years of hard work pay off. And instead, he lost everything. And during that time, I had started Empowerment Works based on my dream of fighting poverty and seeing an opportunity for local social entrepreneurs and local innovators to build their solutions from the ground up. I always thought, like, wow, here's these local people with all these great ideas, and I thought that development and is a bit neo-colonial and sad that local community members weren't creating the solutions and being supported more. And so that was what Empowerment Works was about. But since we're talking about innovation, I'll just focus on this. So I was in Zimbabwe, and I was looking for locally available treatments for AIDS. And being a big fan of inventors, I entrusted a lot of energy and time into a local inventor of this medicinal treatment. and it worked well that I could see. We were trying to get more clinical evidence, and um, I was in the middle of that, and I came home from one of my trips in Zimbabwe, and my dad told me that he had cancer, and so I stayed in the States and didn't go back for about 9 months, and we thought he was getting better, and then he was unable to eat. Somehow he couldn't go to the bathroom, and we found out that he was really, really terminally ill, that the cancer had spread, and it got to the point where they gave him actually 2 days to live, and so I used some of this medicine that was for AIDS, but there were different ingredients, different formulas, and the formula that was good for cancer, or I was told to use for cancer, I gave to him with 2 days to live. And from not being able to eat regular food and not being able to pass, have a bowel movement, within 3 days he was on a regular diet, he was having regular bowel movements, and it was a dramatic recovery. It was like nothing the doctors had ever seen. And unfortunately, we ran out, and we were unable to get more, and then through the customs in time for him to live past 6 weeks. But his health was dramatically improved. And so, wow, so this is 12 years ago, and I really struggled to see how I could move that medicine forward. And this is after seeing the collapse of my dad's company because of big business, right? The vested interest of other turbochargers. Something as simple as turbos like crushed my dad's company in this incredible innovation that could have cleaned the air. And then here he wasn't able to get this health treatment, also kind of because of a vested interest in our current way we treat major expensive diseases and terminal life-threatening diseases. And I had some partnerships with some major medical research institutions, and I was really disappointed to find out that there was literally no way of developing this medicine for a large, public consumption without it going through the most expensive channels and staying within the big pharma. And so I just really looked at the walls around me and what it would take, and having seen what my dad, who was I think far more convincing and more of a powerful kind of leader and more experienced in his way of raising money and doing things, and I just thought, wow, like the reality was just a little too real. And I continued with empowerment works. I kind of played with Bionova, which was the name of this medical, treatment research project, but I basically gave it up. And so that was the beginning. That was the beginning. I know I've shared a bit there, but
yeah, he was. So your dad was an amazing influence. Wow, I know we talked a little bit before, but I didn't realize that he had over 100 patents. That's in and of itself speaks to the brilliance of this man. And I think that what's so poignant in your stories in those two pieces that both are, your dad is the central figure in these, is that the underlying theme here is that there were systems in place, like you're saying, that really were not allowing for these inventions to be brought forward for whatever reason. And you doing now so much work and having sort of dedicated your life to the social entrepreneurialism, and I mean, you have a whole systems approach with empowerment works, but what I actually want to ask you about is, from those experiences, what systemic barriers do you think are really keeping us from getting innovations like the innovation that your dad made out to market, or the cure for AIDS or cancer, whatever? I mean, there's so many innovations out there, but what, from your perspective, what are some of the systemic barriers that are keeping us from getting them out to market?
Well, what supports any systemic barrier is the need for security. And, we're a tribal animal, and, people go to medical school and they go to the army, they become affiliated with a lot of people who think like they do. And everyone wants to believe they're doing the right thing, that they're protecting their country, that they're, putting food on the table, they're paying for their kids' college, whatever. We have to live with ourselves at the end of the day. And so I think that it's this paradigm of fear and being right and being in a certain camp. It's the segregation of our society and the influences or lack thereof that might shift those perspectives. So it's a subtle, but it's like that's the main fascia of the social ecosystem is
Yeah.
what we believe to be true that allows for this continuance of the status quo.
Right.
And so the
Yeah.
relationship with consciousness.
And it's really, I talk about this a lot actually in the work that I do, so I'm glad that you brought up the status quo as a major piece in that, if we're looking at problem, but what needs to be changed, and this concept of status quo and wanting the safety. People don't like to challenge the status quo, yet that's how we create big change is by challenging conventional wisdom and knowledge, by challenging the status quo.
Yeah, and what this idea of a whole systems approach, it really, one of the reasons that local resilience is so important is that it unhooks us from a macro media addiction of a status quo. If communities can be sustainable and we can grow our own food and kind of get off of the giant teat of whatever is milking us, or I mean what we're milking, it's what I'm saying, it's this attachment to this larger foreign entity, that we're part of this massive multinational web. So if it's this local resilience and this connection with our immediate community is one way to detach. What I saw as really hopeful, and if I don't see something as hopeful for humanity, then I have a really, really hard time getting behind it and putting my energy toward it. And after the whole AIDS potential solution and BioNova, which I was really inspired about, I went to the World Social Forum and I saw this potential to galvanize a larger social movement that could be committed to a paradigm shift towards local sustainable solutions, which I believe also requires global collaboration in support of that locally led paradigm and locally implemented approach. And that's where the Global Summit came about. We had an idea of this 6 sectors, including responsible media groups, educational institutions, sustainable businesses, collaborating nonprofits, and social entrepreneurs. And those are kind of the basic, very grassroots 6 sectors, but they're also sectors that can be found globally. And so the idea of the Global Summit was to bring about leaders and exemplary members of each of these sectors so that we could think tank together what are the principles that would allow for a sustainable future, and not by being against capitalism or against something, but as we're all learning, we need to stand for something. And so it's towards this sustainable collaborative world, but in a really a critical mass global collaboration. And so that was the idea of the Global Summit, and also a critical mass platform that was so strong that even like a multinational or whatever the enemy might be would just dissipate, that we could together in this larger movement become greater than. We could be the new status quo together. But the idea is that we needed to bridge these movements. We can't be the social movement, the environmental movement, the economic justice. It's not enough critical mass to be a tipping point.
And the truth is that they're all pieces to the whole, right? So they're inseparable and interdependent, and all these movements trying to do things independently, like you're saying, there's just not the critical mass behind them. So I love that vision that you have with the Global Summit, and it's not just a vision, it's something that you've actually put into action, and you've now had 4, if I'm correct, right? Has it been 4 summits so far? Yeah, over the course of 8 years.
One last November, and gearing up for number 5 in Brazil for the second Olympic summit. So, yeah, it's been a real learning. It's really hard, as anyone who facilitates collaboration knows, and with so many moving parts and different goals, there's a lot of different needs and ideas, and it's really been an incredible journey.
Yeah, I mean, I think you bring up a good point there. There's challenges in changing this entire model and being a part of something new and pioneering something new like you are. What are some of the biggest challenges that you find just in like putting together a project like the Global Summit?
Really clear communication and expectations. I mean, I think it's a lot of the same problems that everyone deals with within any organization. Bringing together new partners for each summit is particularly challenging because you're needing to learn, just different working styles, different what this means, when you commit to this, what does it actually mean? And also that we've been mostly a volunteer-based group, which is part of the initiative. It's part of the leadership. It's part of why it's exciting, because it is something that people want to do, and it's the challenge of finding what's the sweet spot that's going to inspire that partner to move forward, and how do we create something that's valuable to all the partners. If we had $1 million budget, it would be another show, but it's not a show. It's a co-creation of partners that all have an interest in it.
Well, I can imagine, and I don't know, but I can just imagine that bringing together all of those people, as much as part of what we're talking about is challenging the status quo and doing that at a local level, but having the global support, even in bringing together the individuals in each of these different 6 sectors that you talk about. There's probably status quo within each of those that you're still dealing with in bringing the people together for the summit. So I'm just guessing.
Totally, like the sponsorship model, and that we're, in order for the Global Summit to be successful, it's actually been, there were partners that wanted to totally privatize it, or do it in a way that just to do an event that doesn't have one target market is a pretty major departure from the typical conference success model.
Yes.
And I was like given very good advice in order for it to be financially sustainable. I'm just really stubborn about this idea of it bridging these different perspectives, which is really unsustainable financially. So I've made it really hard. But yeah, not having a target market, and it's crazy. We'll see what happens. I think it'd be great to bring together much larger organizations that have the capacity. But anyway, yeah, it's relevant even more so to innovation, because it's had a strong focus on being a platform for breakthrough technological and other innovations. We had in the last, not 2014 was about women, power, money, and politics, and it was a small summit in the city focused on the rise of women and power. But typically we focus a great deal on innovation and technical breakthroughs with the idea of getting, new water or new energy, new building, things that are really breakthrough solutions out to the world. And we did in 2012 for the London Summit, we had a global crowdsourcing of innovations from idea to implementation stage. And our lead partner is actually a major innovation professor in India, and he put together a publication of a lot of these grassroots innovations. And there's a lot of great examples right now of capital shifting to innovation for the other 90%, like Paul Polak, who is the author of Design for the Other 90%. He's a great example.
So is he someone that you're talking, is he someone that has funding options for these types of innovations then?
Yeah. He partnered with some major funders and created a fund for innovations that can impact over 1 billion people, which is like the bottom billion that have the ability. So Paul Polak funding social enterprises. There's some new funding vehicles through he and his partners and other entrepreneurs, even the X Prize, although that's not quite the lower billion, but definitely serving the masses.
Yeah, and so besides him, are there any other funding mechanisms out there that are helping innovation and helping to shift in terms of the status quo?
Yeah, I think the whole social enterprise, social capital markets movement, the idea that we can harness the private sector to fund sustainability it's happening. I just switched my phone to Credo Mobile. It's the biggest funder of a lot of progressive, keeping the internet free and open. It's the largest funder of Planned Parenthood. I believe they give about half of their revenue to causes. And I mean, there's shoes. There's new business models. It's what's happening is social change has typically been, taking not social change, but philanthropy as a whole is shifting for social change through such businesses because, as you all might know, social change is very hard to fund because philanthropy comes from private foundations like Microsoft or Bill Gates. I mean, that's been a tiny percentage of their sort of big bucks. They're not really looking to change the status quo. And so they give little bits of charity, which often are just maintaining the status quo. And this is why nonprofits tend to get stuck in doing what is fundable rather than what's going to be system changing.
Right.
And so when a company can be created that can fund a bigger mission and not have to be reliant on some private foundation of a giant corporation, then we're really starting to see a shift. And I believe that is happening right now, which is very exciting.
Yeah, it is exciting. And I think you, to me, brought something interesting or that needs to be addressed to light is the piece about bringing these options into mass awareness. For instance, you mentioned your phone and you're using, what's it called? The name of it?
Credo Mobile, formerly Working Assets.
Okay, so that company, like, I've never heard of it until you told me about it yesterday. And so that's an option I have to change my phone provider, and yet it's not like a mass public. Bringing those types of options to mass public awareness is another whole piece of this puzzle, don't you think?
Absolutely. Yeah, and we just need to wake up and take action and look for those solutions. I mean, we're so lucky in the Bay Area because I actually was inspired by one of the founders of Credo Mobile. I was blown away to hear him. And there's a lot of responsible media out there. You can turn on the radio and listen to, KPFA or whatever. And the internet, though, is available. It's I think once you see, it's hard to unsee, but yeah, there's a lot of
Right.
people who haven't seen yet. So we need to talk to our friends and challenge each other in creative and friendly ways.
And that's the challenging the status quo, just in our one-on-one conversations, that we can have meaningful conversations, create connections, challenge the status quo with each other, challenge our own status quo. I'm always asking, well, what if that, I always say that the one question that we should all be asking ourselves on a regular basis that most people never ask themselves is that true? Is my belief true? Is what I'm thinking true? I mean, that's the work of Byron Katie at its core, but questioning any belief that we have, because a belief is essentially our own status quo, whether it's our personal belief, a collective belief. It's a good place to start.
Exactly. And this is tying back to our healthcare system,
Yeah,
right? Like this is it true that there are alternatives to chemotherapy as a first line of action, for
yeah.
example?
Yeah, and I always like to ask when I have friends over, like we're in discussion and they make a definitive statement. I'm like, oh, really? Is that true? Is that right? Like, and not in like a challenging way, but sort of a curious way. Like, is that really true? And then it makes them think. Sometimes they're like, well, I mean, they like backtrack. Sometimes, well, I heard it. It's like, well, that's not just because you heard it like that or whatever. It's like be careful, like just good to notice and bring some awareness, at least in the beginning. All
Absolutely.
of it. Yeah. So I want to bring it back around as we pull together our show for today, to what you're working on next. You talked a little bit about it in the very beginning, BioNova, and would you be willing to share a little bit about what you're doing with that project, where that's gone? You said you started it with it 12 years ago. Yeah.
So I wasn't planning on picking it back up. For whatever reason, I just didn't have enough hope. And now it seems extremely obvious that I take action. Sometimes whatever is going on in the subconscious can block things out. And I think those things have gone away because in the last few months, I've been hearing about people with a loved one being terminally ill with cancer, and it's been really strong. And I went to Guatemala the last couple months, and my incredible teacher of a writing workshop, she's could be losing someone. And then my last night, I met a young woman who's only 26, has recently lost her leg because of bone cancer, and it has now is now having lung cancer because it metastasized, which is what my father had, was lung cancer. And she's 26 and has 3 small children, and is in Guatemala. And it was like so clear to me, like everything just started lining up with everything else, all of the opportunities there. And basically what I had was a promising formula that I, with some rudimentary lab support and a little bit of funds, can put together what I am confident it would be better than nothing and could provide some hope for these people. And so I was just in a boot camp this last 4 days and mapped out the action plan, and I'm excited. I feel so good that it's like, okay, there's like an opening for this to happen.
Mm.
I think
Yeah.
that the consciousness has shifted, and it is a dance between like the consciousness of could this actually come through, and having like the physical action and the commitment, and it's all there. And so I am in the process of revamping BioNova, and Empowerment Works is a fiscal sponsor, so we have that infrastructure in place to be a fiscal sponsor for it. We fiscally sponsor 40 extraordinary initiatives that all value local asset-based community development, which means focusing on what the rich, cultural heritage and environmental resources within a community, and then building livelihoods from that. And so I'm launching Bionova Health in collaboration with a community near Lake Atitlan, specifically starting with a community where young women have a high incidence rate of ovarian cancer. And there's a doctor working on that, and I've been connected to a phenomenal woman who's been working there for 40 years. She's almost 80, and so she's a collaborator and supporter. And then I'm going to see what I can do about getting this medicine to people who are terminally ill, who can afford to pay and contribute to the initiative outside of the U.S., of course. And then long term, we'll see what we can do with FDA, but that's definitely down the road.
Wow, that's really amazing. I think there's something to be said for timing for you on that after 12 years, and that the universe provides us evidence like confirmation. This is what you need to bring. The time is now. Everything is just such a perfect wraparound to this conversation, and everything you're doing is so amazing, Melanie. You're very humble about it, but when you talk and what you talk about, what you've done, from my perspective, it's huge. I mean, you're pioneering a whole entire new way of thinking and doing it very much with grace, and I think it's wonderful. Thank you for your work that you're doing in the world.
Thank you for your work. You're such an inspiration, Lisa. It's such a pleasure to be in your presence, and thank you so much for this opportunity to get our message out there and invite everyone here into the conversation so we can keep expanding this new world and this righteous truth to create a thriving planet and humanity.
Absolutely. And so for any of our viewers, if they wanted to connect with you, what would be the best way for them to learn more about you, what you're doing? You have Empowerment Works. You're up on the screen so people can see that. Is that the best way to contact you?
Yeah, Empowerment Works has links to the Global Summit, and we'll be getting a web page up for Bionova Health soon. That'll be listed under our fiscally sponsored projects, and I would check out those projects as well. There's just some really exciting work going on with our partners, and it's great. It's really, I'm surrounded by phenomenal people and inspiration. So yeah, empowermentworks.org. And you can find me there on the contact page.
Wonderful.
You can also find us on Facebook and Empowerment Works and the Global Summit and Melanie St.James. I'm easy to find.
Perfect. And what I'll do is actually your contact, Melanie's contact information is in our event page, but I can add those other. Oh no, I have your links in there. I have your Facebook link, and your LinkedIn link in there as well. So. Thank you once again, Melanie, for taking the time out of your day to join me here today, and your energy. It's been wonderful having you as part of the show.
Yeah, thank you so much, Lisa. Looking forward to following up and hearing comments from anyone out there listening.
Yeah, so that just a reminder to anybody viewing live, or if you're viewing in replay, any questions or comments that you have for Melanie, please leave them in the comments section below our video here. This is also on YouTube, so maybe leaving a YouTube comment. When you do, please be sure to plus mention myself or Melanie so that we get the notification that you've left a comment and we can comment back. So I want to thank all of you viewers for taking your time to spend a little bit of time with a visionary leader, and it's been wonderful having you here as well. It's my belief that we are all visionaries. We all have the capacity to be visionaries. Each of us has an inner calling. Each of us has a vision, and in some way, whatever little way, it might be as small as, or what you think is small for your family, or whether it's your community or this planet, we all have something to give to the world. And my hope is that you are able to get just a little bit of inspiration and some ideas about innovation today from Melanie, let's continue this conversation. It's very, very important as we are making this shift and as we are moving into this new era of human possibility. So that's it for this episode of Hangouts with Visionary Leaders, everybody. Until next time, we'll see you then.
Thank you.